Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Housing Committee. My name is Councillor Richard Pinniger and I'm Vice Chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel. If you ask a question at this meeting, you will be deemed to have consented to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for broadcasting and/or training purposes. Please note a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. Apologies, I think the only apology is Councillor Took, can't be here. Declarations of interest, does anybody have any interest to declare? Item 3, public and member questions. No questions have been received for the current meeting. Item 4, minutes of the last meeting. They've been circulated with the agenda. Has anybody got any amendments to make? I've said that, no, I think I do. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so I sign those, do I?
Show of hands, everyone's
Show of hands, please, to accept the minutes.
You can sign it.
Okay, I'll sign those. Where do I sign? Every page?
Page.
Or on the back?
The last page.
Oh, just in space. Okay. Date. Thank you. Okay, so we're up to item 5 already, and that is the CEO briefing. I'd like to invite Gareth Edmondson, the Chief Executive, to present to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just give you a brief update on 4 key areas, which I think are areas of focus for us in terms of our ongoing progress and transformation as an organisation. So the first one, as you'll recall from my briefing that I gave at the last meeting, we wrote out to all of our tenants to inform them that we'd be making a self-referral to the regulator. That was broadly around matters of property and compliance, particularly around the safety and quality standard. We have engaged with the regulator following our submission, and we were notified last week that the regulator will be taking no further action at this stage, so they wouldn't be making an intervention. So in some senses, I'm grateful to the teams of people across the organisation that were working on how we respond to demonstrate to the regulator that we are making the right interventions to put right what we need to. And we've given them certain satisfaction and assurance that we have matters progressing and under control. So whilst that is positive, what I just want to emphasise is from a leadership perspective, the fact that they have chosen not to make any further intervention at this stage doesn't change our organisational focus and priority in terms of driving improvement around safety and quality as our first priority. Absolutely critical to that is the ongoing progression of our condition survey. Now, I know that we'll probably come to that later on in the agenda. Allied to that in terms of an organisational priority, I would also say that it is vital that we continue to drive at organisational improvements around those consumer standards, because that is important for at the point when we inevitably get our inspection. So we haven't been notified yet about when we will have our inspection, but one thing we do know is that it will happen. So it's absolutely vital that we continue to ensure that right across the organisation we have absolute clarity on what our key priority is, and that is continuing to address the required improvements that we need to make across those sorts of particular safety and compliance areas across our homes. So to that end, I'm pleased to report that we had our first Consumer Standards Programme Board that was actually earlier on today. So that is a formal programme that we've established comprising of officers and members, including our Cabinet member, to take overall oversight of that improvement programme. So that will be a large programme that will run for many, many months across all of those consumer standards. And so we've sort of approved all of the initiation documents to move that forward, which I think is a positive step. And no doubt as a committee, you will see the fruits of that programme in terms of the reports and the reporting that we will be bringing to you over the coming weeks, months and years. The third thing I'll say is just around organisationally in terms of people. We are currently out to advert for a key appointment. So that is a senior director post that will have oversight of the planned investment and repairs sort of division of housing. So we are in the process of recruitment to that. So again, that's a critical appointment to continue that leadership of those functions and to drive that improvement. I'm also pleased to report that we've appointed Caroline into the other director post that was sitting on the other side of the business looking at the community side. So congratulations to Caroline on that. So that's a key appointment that has been made, and I expect that, you know, as we move and evolve as an entire organisation, we will continue to update you about other important appointments. The final thing I will just talk about is a key bit around branding and how the council presents itself. So prior to transfer, we talked about taking a steady approach to not necessarily trying to sweep away the previous Cheltenham Borough Homes branding overnight, because this was about demonstrating that we were managing a safe transition and providing reassuring messages. However, it's funny how time goes quite quickly, and we are now some months from July. So I think we're moving into a phase where, in a steady but meaningful way, we will start to promote, and you will see the Cheltenham Borough Council branding appearing more in sort of tenant-facing ways. So in terms of our communications, letters that we would send out, as I said, this isn't going to happen overnight, but we will start to move more noticeably into Cheltenham Borough Council branding, and that would also include starting to phase out the old sort of CBH email addresses and those sorts of things to get people onto common Cheltenham websites. That's important for two reasons. Number one, it is starting to signal that message that we are one organisation. But secondly, I won't go into the detail of it, but it also makes it easier from an IT perspective, because while we've got these well-working patches, getting us all in the same place from an IT perspective actually makes things a bit smoother because there's a few kinks that currently exist by having us operating in sort of two separate servers. I'm not an expert, but essentially that would help that. So I will stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions, but I'm conscious there's a lot on the agenda, and I'm sure that it will probably come out as we go through the papers. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gareth. Do any members have questions for Gareth? Flo. Sorry.
Simply to ask a question in relation to the priorities, safety in particular, and how you see that as involving tenants at the heart of what is being done, and how we ensure that the tenant voice is properly heard.
So I'll start by saying that I think involving our tenants, leaseholders, shared owners in everything that we do is something that we always try and do, whether that is communicating that we have done a self-referral in the first place, updating about where we are in the findings about everything from our stock condition survey about our improvement journey. We talked last time about the creation of our refreshed governance around tenant panels. So I see that as a primary forum, and we always said that that forum is incredibly important, and happy to ensure that that can evolve to ensure that we get the most out of those sorts of forums to be getting direct feedback. But more than that, I think it is again challenging ourselves on how we're learning lessons from the complaints that we receive, how we respond when something doesn't quite go right. That there are so many different ways in which I think we can demonstrate that we are listening to our tenants, responding to them, and that will be ongoing process. And part of what I think that is vital about this committee is continuing to identify and drive that improvement in how we engage and involve our tenants and leaseholders. So I don't ever see it as the job is ever complete. I see it always as something that we can always improve upon.
Thank you. Ian.
Yeah, thinking about the training session we had before this meeting, Dean was telling us that the regulator isn't prescriptive about the consumer standards. And this is something that we need to agree with our tenants, set the standard that we think we should be meeting, and then judge ourselves against that standard. Could I just ask, how far along is that process now of working out what standard we are going to judge ourselves by?
I don't know whether other colleagues want to come in here in terms of, do you want to come in for that, Paul? Yeah.
I think we've had to take various steps this year to just move the Almo into the council, and so we moved a lot of policies and procedures and things from so that they actually are now sort of CBC'd rather than CBH. I think now we need to have a programme of taking those policies and that back through this committee, but over time, and we'll work on that so that we can relook at those, because that will involve when we say, are we compliant or not compliant, there's various times where we need to be compliant with the law. There's no negotiation. But other areas where we might decide to be compliant, we've got some policy choices about what we do, and that needs to come through, be consulted on and come through. We can't just do that overnight, because it would then not be done properly anyway. So I think what we're seeing is a programme of looking at those over a period of time, because we can't just magic that up. And if you did, actually, I think the regulator would say, well, taking a load of policies to a committee and just saying, if we all agree those policies, would not be seen as involving and agreeing things. So I think we're still at the start of that journey, and I think the regulator would accept that. We're on that journey because we've got to do it properly. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, no decision is required, but the committee can make recommendations if needed, including when they would like to invite further scrutiny from ONS or the Cabinet, presumably of Gareth. Item 6 on the agenda is Property Compliance Performance and Stock Condition Project Update. It's to provide the committee with an understanding of our property compliance status and the planned improvements needed to address areas of non-compliance. I'd like to invite Vicky Day, Head of Technical and Investment, to present to the committee.
Good evening. You've all been shared a copy of the compliance report, which, because of the timing of preparing the report, it actually looked at performance through to the end of September. But following the comments at the last Housing Committee, we've done an update since so that that could be shared in advance of this meeting so that you're looking at more up-to-date information through to the end of October. So hopefully you've all had a chance to see that. I think it was only shared on Monday this week, but that shows the general direction of travel, which is an improved position from the last report, which was the period to the end of August. Obviously, the specific areas of concern around fire safety, there's been further progress on that. The progress in delivering the actions has slowed because we're waiting for 2 contracts to come online that will deliver the vast majority of the remaining actions. But as at the end of October, we were down to 119 outstanding and overdue actions from the fire risk assessments. So it is positive. There's a lot of effort being put into getting that work up and running. And the other area of concern that's been reported as part of the self-referral is around the stock condition survey, where I'm pleased to say that we are now live doing surveys. As of yesterday, they'd completed 155. It's a slow start, but they're ramping up and resolving any sort of teething problems that they've had. So we're evidencing that those are being done, the information's coming in, we'll be quality checking that information, and we're also live getting housing health and safety rating system risk category 1 and 2s reported through that process. So that's encouraging that system is now up and running, and we're dealing with the actions that are coming out of there. I'm hoping also that there was a comment at the last committee of wanting a bit more information around what the types of actions are that are outstanding, and I've tried not to get too granular with it because they're quite broad, but I'm hoping that the information that you've got gives you a good understanding of the nature of the issues that we're resolving.
Thank you, Vicky. Can I ask who sent that email?
The supplement.
So it's updated on the agenda on the website. Okay. So I've got the agenda pack, and that goes up to 30th of September.
Yeah, and then you should have had an October one that came out as the agenda supplement.
Okay. Well, hopefully other people have read that. So do we have any questions for Vicky? Ian.
Hi, yeah, just one general question and a couple of slightly more technical ones. Now, I'm aware that, because I get these printed, sometimes your numbering system isn't the same as mine, but I'm on page 14, page 2 of 10 of your report, and top of the page, item 4, stock condition survey. We're working closely with the third-party surveying company, Rand Associates, to ensure that the programme is designed to enable early extrapolation of the data to identify whether there are potential issues that need to be considered. Now, apologies if I'm asking how long is a piece of string, But do we have any indication when we are going to get some of that information through? I'm then looking at the property compliance KPI report, and before people think I've got capped gas on the brain, we talked about this at the last meeting, where there were 42 tenanted properties with the gas capped. Now I've got here the one coming up to the 30th of September, that figure has increased to 69. I don't know if the one for October has a more recent figure. But we were concerned as to what was happening with those homes, with those tenants, particularly with winter coming up, that do they not have gas in their homes because they can't pay their bill or what? And we were going to hopefully get some detail about that and look. I'm aware there are charities, there are voluntary groups that can provide support if people are in fuel poverty. There are allowances and grants that can be applied for that people may not know about. But are we seriously looking at these? Is it still 69 tenanted properties with capped gas? 62. Yeah. October, yeah, no, so I mean, according to Dean, last time 42 was pretty high. 62 is not great. So couldn't we please see what's happening with these tenants?
Could I pass that to Caroline?
Yeah, sure.
Obviously we picked up the action at the last committee meeting, every one of those tenants has been contacted, and the major issue is that tenants are choosing to have their gas capped because they don't want to pay the standing charge. So we've put every one of those tenants on a quarterly cycle in agreement with them. So we will recontact them every quarter, to check whether the position is the same, but also to check on their well-being. And every one of them has been referred to our money and benefit advice service because obviously, as you'll appreciate, every circumstance is individual, and that service has the expertise to refer them to the right support if they qualify for that. But we will keep track of those tenants throughout the winter, and obviously if there's any opportunity to bring those supplies back on, we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you, and well done, Ian, for raising this. Sorry, Vicky, for cutting you off there. Do you have more to add?
No, I thought Ian had another question, so I was waiting. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to ask about the KPI report, on page 5 of the appendix, workstream electrical checks. There's a table at the bottom of that page, overdue high risk C1, danger to life, overdue medium risk actions, and 12 unknowns in the boxes. And then if we go to asbestos safety, we have a similar table, high risk, medium risk, low risk, and it just says unknown in all.
Sorry, thank you, Ian. Can we explain the unknowns? Because I think everyone would have noticed that.
Yeah, shall I start with the stock condition question, the first question you asked? What we're aiming to do is undertake an initial 20% survey. Once we get to that, based on a stratified sample across all the stock, we should have good information that we can pull out to understand whether there are any underlying issues that we're going to be seeing as the survey progresses. And we're expecting to get to that position by February.
So to confirm, these are placeholders at the moment.
when Ian had asked at what point we will know what the issues are coming out of the stock condition survey. So that's basically, we assume once we get to 20%, we'll have a good understanding of what's going to come out, and we can extrapolate that across the stock. And obviously, as the survey progresses, we'll be going up to 100% survey anyway, but it should give us a good indication. On the unknowns, the reason they're unknown is because we cannot evidence through the existing systems that we've got in place. So whilst with the electrical safety inspections, any Cat 1 or Cat 2 issues that are identified during the electrical inspection are actually dealt with there and then. And the Cat 3s are referred back into the office and jobs raised for those. But we haven't got a system that links everything that's recorded and evidences that it's been completed. So that's something that we're looking at moving forwards, of how we can build that evidence so that in the future those boxes won't be unknown. But on the basis that we haven't got something that we can say absolutely that's where we are, we've put unknown. And effectively the same is with the asbestos surveys. They come in, that they're looked at, if anything needs doing, it's raised as a job, but we haven't got a record system for collating any actions required and then tracking them through to completion. So we're looking over the next couple of months to mobilise new asbestos contracts, and part of that will pick up the process to ensure that we've got that evidence.
Thank you. So part of the new culture of openness rather than reassurance is that these are now in the reports. We don't know yet. So any further questions before Councillor Clucas.
Sorry, can I just ask for paragraph 1 of the report, sorry, paragraph 3 of the report, which is executive summary, paragraph 3. Could I ask for that to be amended to read cabinet member approval? That should read finance, cabinet member finance approval. Okay? That did not come to me.
Okay, it looks like that's fine. Someone will amend it. Good. I have some comments on the report as well. Just give me a second. So Appendix 3, the gas safety. I believe that we said we would count the number of properties that were affected. So if there was one property in a block, then the number would be the number of affected properties, not the number of properties that didn't have a landlord's gas safety certificate. Can I ask just a few questions and then you can come back to me? On the fire safety work stream, we've got, well, I'm looking at the older report, but we have 26 high-risk actions. And although we have an explanation of the outstanding actions being fire doors, escape routes, or compartmentalisation, we don't actually know what those 26 high-risk actions are, even the ones that are in the other category, so 6 to 12 months. So there's 26 of those. I was just looking out for anything that was different in those ones. Next. On fire safety again, in escape routes, we're waiting for planning permission for some some items. I was wondering if we could ask planning officers to prioritise. I guess that's a question for Gareth, if we could ask for that, because it is a safety issue and these are high risks. And then just going down. I wanted to check that now we've begun the conditions survey, will we still be looking at, I think I heard somewhere 20%. So we'll have done the archetypes by about April next year and then we'll be able to project. Is that still on track? I think that's fine. Then I'm on to the acuity survey. Could you have a crack at those? Thanks.
Yes, Chair. In terms of the first one, the properties in blocks for the commercial gas, that is the number of blocks where we have commercial gas, so boilers that serve a number of flats. The number of flats affected are in the TSM, the box below. So we've got I'm looking at the September report. The domestic is individual boilers in people's homes is 4,262 homes affected. But if we include the properties that are supplied with communal heating, the total number is 4,422. We can put in another line to give the number of flats specifically in the blocks, if that's what you prefer to see.
I think it's supposed to be the total number of affected flats. So if those two are in blocks, then we should have a number for how many flats.
It's 4,422. That's the TSM that we're required to report on the row below.
Okay, well, if that's clear to everyone else, maybe we can talk about that afterwards
sure.
or another time.
Okay.
Okay.
In terms of the fire risk actions and what they are, I have given additional information, but because they're quite often, everyone is slightly different, I didn't want to give you 119 explanations of individual issues that we've got. Obviously, we have carried out certain mitigation works where we hadn't been able to reduce the risk. For instance, with the listed buildings, they've got notional fire doors in them, but because we can't evidence that they meet current requirements, we've made the decision to fit certified fire doors.
Thank you. I was just asking for any different properties in that 26, because that's the list of high risk. Whether or not it's over a year old or 6 to 12 months, those are the high risk ones. And we can't see specifically whether those ones are what they are. We've the 133 or 119 in the new report is across all the risk levels, high, medium and low, planned.
Okay, in the next one then we'll, specifically the high risk, we'll put more information on them, yeah?
Thank you.
Okay. In terms of planning, I can answer that one. The listed building application has been submitted and they are giving it priority. But legally, we it's a criminal offence to do the works without the permission. And we're not expecting it to be a problem, but we just need to go through that process. But they are working on that now. And in terms of the 20%, that's by February for the stock survey, for the sample.
Very good, thank you. So, anybody else have any questions? So, no decision is required, but the committee can make recommendations if needed, including when they would like to invite further scrutiny from ONS or the Cabinet. So with that, we're on to item 7, which is the 2024-25 tenant satisfaction measures, and it's a tracker update. I would like to invite Caroline Walker, Director of Housing, Customer and Community Services, to present to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is quarter two's report. So it's outlining the feedback we've had from the 250 or so customers that were contacted during the quarter by Acuity, who do this work for us independently. And I've structured the executive summary to cover to bring to light, obviously, some of the detail that's in the report. And there's a noticeable consistency from quarter 1 to quarter 2, both in the areas that the council are achieving high satisfaction with its tenants. So examples include time to take complete repairs, keeping tenants informed and treating tenants fairly and with respect. And again, there's consistency in the areas where there's less satisfaction, listening to views and acting upon them, our approach to dealing with antisocial behaviour, maintenance of communal areas and the handling of complaints. Since the last meeting, what we've done is try to focus on taking perception, particularly in 2 areas, both in ASB and in communal areas, and starting to develop activities that will start to address that dissatisfaction. For ASB, we've started doing focus groups with individuals who've experienced ASB to understand how we can make that experience better. We're working with comms colleagues to communicate better on the activities that we do within the ASB team, so people understand that if they do take the courage to report, then that action can be taken to successfully resolve the issues that have been experienced. We're planning at the moment for that next week is ASB Awareness Week, so we want to work with comms colleagues to attract as much attention to what activity, or to educate tenants about what the opportunities are once ASB is reported. And the other area, there's been a bit of a shift in mindset for us because it is perception survey. We've often gone back and tracked and realised that people's dissatisfaction is not based on actually having reported ASB to the council. So what we've done, and we've been working on this over the last fortnight or so, is to contact those people, understand why they haven't reported and what they see as the barriers to that, and to also encourage reporting at that stage, so we're then able to map out some of the ASB that we'd been previously unaware of because it hadn't been reported. And that's starting to, produce a really positive conversation with those tenants and start to give us a richer picture of ASB that's remaining unaddressed at the current time. So hopefully as we get into the next quarter, we'll be able to understand better that level of under-reporting and also understand better the barriers to reporting. So again, hopefully when we report back after quarter 3, there'll be further intelligence to share with you. Again, in communal areas, we've looked at the rotas and schedules for the different cleaning crews to try and make those rotas as efficient as possible to reduce any wasted time. So every minute possible is invested in cleaning those spaces and not necessarily travelling across the town. There's a review of the equipment being used to make that as effective as possible for the teams. We've just restarted a block survey form so that tenants can feed back on issues in real time in terms of dissatisfaction with cleaning in the blocks. And we've also assigned a tradesperson to be able to check blocks regularly and pick up any unaddressed repairs so that the environment is generally in a better quality. That's some of the highlights from the TSM tracker for this quarter. Very happy to take questions.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? Ian.
Just one very brief thing. I was reading your report and seeing the new cleaning rotas and schedules, the new equipment, etc. And my heart did a little leap of joy because I think I've been banging on about this for quite a long time, and properly resourcing the estates teams that come out so often when they've come out to where I live, they have a little brush and a dirty mop and some lukewarm water, and they're expected to clean up something that's had dirt ground into it for like 50 years. So actually having actually spoken to these guys quite a lot, and it actually having the right kit and the investment to do that job properly, I think is excellent. So thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Could I encourage our leaseholder and tenant representatives to perhaps explain anything that they've seen in this report? Is there anything you want to raise at this point? No? Okay, that's fine. So, right, there's no decision required, but the committee can make recommendations if needed, including when they would like to invite further scrutiny from O&S or the Cabinet. So that's item 7 done. We're on to item 8. Quarter 2, 2024-25 Housing Complaints and Compliments Report. To provide an overview of housing-related complaints and compliments from quarter 2, identifying key areas of dissatisfaction and areas for learning and service improvement. I'd like to invite Caroline Walker, Director of Housing, Customer and Community Services, to present to the committee.
Thank you very much again, Chair. So again, this is quarter 2 complaints report, and I'm pleased to share with you that there's been a slight reduction in number of complaints from 67 in quarter 1 to 59 for quarter 2. And one of the great focuses on this, apart from trying to resolve the complaints to the tenant's satisfaction, ideally at stage 1 of the process, is that we pick out the learning points and the patterns, if you like, that are appearing across our complaints activity. In quarter 1, 21 of the complaints that we received were relating to the quality of work in repairs. There's been a great deal of work and dialogue with the repairs teams, and we've got those the quality of work complaints down to 12 for quarter 2, so that's heading in a positive direction. The areas that we want to focus on as a result of quarter 2 complaints are poor communication, which is an area that we've got to work across team on to get that better, and we've allocated time in the new year to start addressing that in a more consistent way. And the other issue we're actively working on at the moment is contractor-related issues, because they've formed the focus of complaints for this quarter. I'm also pleased to share with you that the tenant panel, which will involve particularly Agnesco, will be focusing on scrutinising complaints handling processes from a tenant perspective, and we're looking forward to that report being at least in draft by Christmas. And we're also keen to link the poor communication issues, which have been a feature of the complaints for this quarter, with the customer service standard work that we'll be developing, again, as part of both service improvement and as what we need to do for the consumer standards. Again, obviously very happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions? Okay. Well, and I think that reflects what I've written here. So I wrote something I could read out. And it's, I love this, and I particularly love the learning framework. The idea of money given direct to residents for claims might, at first glance, seem unusual, but the cost saving from avoiding litigation more than makes this worth it. Also, it is an incentive to residents to actually get up and complain and make their lives better. And from our side, we get some low-cost learning points and can take those away to improve. It's all fabulous. So thank you. No decision is required, but the committee can make recommendations if needed, including when they would like to invite further scrutiny from O&S or the Cabinet. So with that, we're on to item 9, fencing, hedgerow and boundary policy. And it's to review the policy for how the council will address the repairs, maintenance and renewals of existing boundary fencing and respond to fencing issues raised by tenants. I'd like to invite Caroline Walker, Director of Housing, Customer and Community Services, to present to the committee.
Thank you very much. Just as a kind of scene setter, the reason that we're bringing the fencing policy to you tonight is that this featured as a major area of complaints earlier in the year. We were getting to a place where we weren't able to evidence that we were consistently responding to requests for fencing, and obviously that frustration from our tenants resulted in dissatisfactions. This is a really good area where we're trying to listen and act on the feedback that we've received. One of the key features of the policy is to try and find a balance between our budgetary constraints and the many priorities that we need to fund from the housing revenue account, alongside trying to reach a fair and consistent level of tenant satisfaction in this area, because we've had a lot of feedback that suggests that fencing is very important to our tenants. It's very important in terms of providing safe spaces, very important for the management of dogs, of children, and of antisocial behaviour. So the policy captures all of that, but also tries to take a pragmatic approach in terms of positioning ourselves as making sure that we look at a repairs first option. And I think picking up some feedback from you a number of meetings ago, Chair, is to also include biodiversity and hedging in that policy. I think we've certainly had learning in the fact that tenants have removed hedges because they found that struggle to maintain them. But we have developed projects now to support those vulnerable tenants in keeping those hedges, because they find they're a much more natural and sustainable boundary than any fencing would provide. So obviously that's a very quick summary of the position. Paul, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay, at that point I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Do members have questions around the fencing policy?
I've got one.
I think Bozana's in there first.
I was first because we have a huge issue with fencing. This is really true. And is there any plan to employ more repair people, someone who will be repairing it? Because we're currently waiting like months for repair, which was reported, I don't know, it was probably spring. And nothing happened till now. So I don't know what is the problem, if this is a lack of proper people who can repair, or what could be the problem with this?
Thank you. Do you want them both to speak, and then you can answer? So Agnieszka, if you want to go ahead.
There you go.
So tenant panel learned that there is no set budget for the fencing. Is still this a case? Because from the tenant perspective, what we worry about is if it's not set a budget, how you will make sure you will have money to basically repair the fences. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicky.
Thanks. Is that on? Yeah, okay. We do have a budget. We have a capital budget of around 300,000 a year that we're spending on sort of fences, paths and boundary walls. So that's ongoing programmed work that we've been undertaking from that budget. And then obviously we have a big repairs budget as well, that fencing, day-to-day fencing repairs, those reactive repairs that are called in, is funded from. So, there is funding there to do the fencing work, whether it's a repair or a replacement.
Sorry, I think you were also asked why it hasn't happened for 8 months.
I think we'll have to take that one offline and have a look into it, because it's not something that I'm aware of, that one.
Thank you. Councillor Clucas.
Yep. Can I ask whether in cases such as, well, you were talking about your own case, but in cases such as that, the safety and security of the tenant is taken into account when deciding whether work should be done? Because obviously, if you have a programme and you stick with the programme and someone outside the programme is having a problem which affects the security perhaps of them or indeed of others in the neighbourhood, then should that be a feature of what is decided and when it's decided to do the work?
Yes, that's definitely taken into consideration because quite often fencing repairs could be we may find that the strong winds or something blow fences down and they need replacing. So that's a reactive investment piece of work rather than a planned programme. So we would definitely take into consideration at that stage if something happens and it's creating an issue.
Chair, I wasn't actually thinking of that. I was thinking of a situation, for example, where a fence had been removed or blown down, and what that did was allow non-residents to get into the property of another resident or pass through it to something else. And I just wonder whether that is taken into account when you're looking at how you do things.
Yes, it should be.
It should.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ian. Oh, and then Suzanne, but Ian first.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say something about hedges? One of the driving forces of the voluntary work we do where I live is increasing biodiversity. We have managed to get agreement now from Ubico that as residents will be helping to keep weeds down by non-chemical means, that they are not going to use pesticides in our central block any longer. My late father, who was a farmer on the Herefordshire border, one of his big things was hedge laying. And I know what a highly skilled piece of work this is, because the best type of hedgerows are ones that are native species, because they produce the habitat, but also the food for native wildlife, birds, small mammals, etc. The problem with them is they're not very quick. They're very slow growing. And often I think we see things like privet and box used because they grow quickly rather than take the time to put something in that is going to last for a long time and provide that habitat. So one of the partners we work with is Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, and it may well be worth talking to them. The other point I might just make about specifically where I live, our estate borders onto Lansdowne Road, and most of the front of it is metal bow top fencing until you get almost to the top, and then somebody has planted a huge overgrown hedge right in front of residents' properties, a few feet from their balconies and their front door. And because of where it's located and proximity to the sewers, it is infested with rats and has been for a number of years. And we haven't ever managed to get that particular issue sorted. We haven't, as far as I understand, my understanding at the moment is that hedge wasn't planted by Cheltenham Borough Homes or Cheltenham Borough Council. It was put there by Highways. So I honestly don't know what we do about it, but we have residents there, paradoxically, given that I'm the biggest proponent for hedgerows on planet Earth, who are saying, please God, take these things out because the rats are getting into our houses. So looking at the policy as it's set out, we're looking at where we have put fences in and where fences are bordering on private property. But I believe other agencies may be putting hedges in as well, like, for example, Highways. and they don't seem to actually maintain them or do anything with them. So I just wanted to make you aware.
Would it be okay if I add my comments to that before you answer, because it could answer some of the things that Ian's asking for? And I wrote it down because I knew I'd be sat up here. So I want this policy to be better, and I want us to prioritise hedging. To that end, I'm going to let this through today, but ask that it comes back to committee in October 2025 instead of the usual 4-year review. We have a nature emergency. We voted through a nature emergency on our hands. And I firmly believe that greenery and interaction with nature markedly improves everyone's life. I'm pretty sure that is backed up by research. I'm aware that not everybody is in a position to trim a hedge, but that is a rare case. The more reasonable case is that people do not know how to plant, look after, or understand the benefits of the greenery or relevance to their lives. For CBC, we expect that we have not made a cost-benefit analysis of hedge versus fence, including the fact that a hedge will outlive a fence by a factor of 5 to 1 and only requires replacement once every 4 generations. We should be planting hedges on equal terms with building fences, not paying for a fence, but insisting that the resident is the one who will pick up the tab for a hedge. I disagree with the climate assessment and see this as greenwashing. This should be reassessed against the likely effect of this October 2024 policy because it is presented to before it is presented to Cabinet or Council. The benefit of readdressing the climate impact downwards is that we have encouragement and somewhere to go in the October 2025 review. Is that clear? I hope so. Caroline.
Obviously, we'll take your comments away and obviously share them with those who are not with us, who are part of this policy development tonight. Ian, I think if you wouldn't mind, I'd rather pick up your as a piece of casework, and we can obviously talk about that offline and obviously look at the issues that are being experienced.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your requests, Ian? Thank you. Any more questions? Suzanne, sorry. I mean, Councillor Williams.
Ironically, my question was going to be about hedges as well. One of your colleagues, I can't remember who it was, I recognise his name when he spoke to me, and I can't remember who it was telling me about on the estate I live on, there's a great big hedge and people bordering it, whereas so it's at the bottom of their gardens, basically. They complained about it and they want it all cut back. And he has said the same sort of thing about nature and all that sort of stuff, that, you know, it doesn't agree with our policy to cut it back. And he was on about maybe sort of cutting it down a little bit. And he was going to get back to me. He was going to have a walk around because I said about the whole estate around there. And he hasn't come back to me, so I don't know who it was. Can't remember. Right.
Thank you, Suzanne. Caroline.
Again, can we take that one offline, and we'll work with the geography and the location of it.
Okay, so can I just ask, would you accept the caveat that you'll bring it back in a year's time rather than 4 years?
So Chair, I think obviously what the committee's being asked to do is to approve the policy for onward transmission to Cabinet, who will be the ultimate decision makers in whether to accept the policy for implementation or not. What I would suggest is that report, as it goes forward to Cabinet, includes within it the commentary that's come from this committee, i.e. to bring it back in October, and then that will be then for Cabinet to make a decision that yes, they agree that let's either approve or not approve, and then come back in a year's time. So that will be the process that we would follow. So we put the commentary within the report to Cabinet. The comments that have come from the meeting as well will be captured within there. Can I just also say, whilst I have got the mic, I think if we've got tenants that are waiting 8 months for repairs to their fences, then I think it's only right that we apologise for the delay in that, and we'll obviously look to address those issues as soon as we possibly can. So grateful for Caroline for picking those up, or Vicky, offline, but I would like to just apologise for anyone that's been waiting for that significant period of time.
Thank you, Claire. So the committee are asked to any more questions? Any final comments? The committee are asked to recommend the adoption of this policy for approval by Cabinet. We will try the electronic voting system. Could you please select for the recommendation or against the recommendation or abstain as you see fit?
No, not for us. We're just here for the scenery.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought I had. Didn't bash it hard enough. It's carried.
Flo, Councillor Clucas, could you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you. So that is 4 for, 0 against, so that is carried with comments. Okay, item 10, Strategic Housing Risk Register. To review the strategic risks relating to housing from the Council's Risk Register. I would like to invite Claire Hughes, the Director of Governance and Customer Services, to present to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Council Strategic Housing Risk Register. So just a reminder that we're looking at the strategic risks here as opposed to operational risks. There will be operational risk registers that sit within service areas underneath it. And this is your first version of this report. So just to be clear that moving forward, when the report comes forward to next meetings, you'll be able to see that any sort of change in the risk score, whether risks have gone up, gone down, stayed the same, or where they've been sufficiently mitigated and therefore removed from the risk register. I won't go through the detail about how we assess risk, but there's the risks as identified within the risk register this month currently focus around the areas of stock condition survey, which we've talked about this evening, the sort of regulatory and legal requirements, compliance, health and safety, tenant satisfaction, and the housing revenue account. As luck would happen, as we were pulling this report together, the updated sector risk profile also got published. So I've included a little bit of text highlighting some of the key points from that. It's by no means in full detail, the risk profile. If anybody has clicked on the link and read it, is well done, Ian, a very long document, but is worth a read. So I would recommend if you've got some time to have a little look at it. But I've just pulled out within the report a couple of the key things that are being obviously pulled through this time, which is, again, it's around existing stock and service quality development and sales, and also around sort of like the financial and treasury management side of things. So I think it's relatively straightforward, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Does any member have any questions? Ian.
Yeah, hi, thank you for this. I have seen very many of these in my time. I was a board champion for risk previously and sat on the Audit and Risk Committee. And I'm halfway through the sector risk profile. It's a real page turner. I believe it is 1 page longer than last year's, at 28 pages. A lot of the things that Gareth talked about in his introduction, I wanted to pick up on here. The first thing I'd just like to say, this is probably the clearest, most focused risk profile register that I've seen. And what you were talking about in terms of, and what in fact Dean was talking about in the session beforehand, about the new reality where we are now and the risks as they are now as opposed to where they were before the new regulatory regime came in. So I think that reflects that very well. And if we can keep up that focus, I know that some of the numbers look a bit scary at first glance, but hopefully as we get the stock condition information through, we will start to see those numbers coming down. The thing that stood out to me most of all was that in all the other risk registers I've seen, the viability of the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account, was at the top of the list, and now it's at the bottom. And it's interesting because obviously everything else that we want to do relies on the continued viability of the HRA. But I wonder, given that the economic situation, the interest rates, the inflation rate have all started to come back down now, is giving us more optimism in terms of the HRA. And I just wondered, I know this is coming, I think, in the next meeting, but I just wondered what your modelling for the HRA is saying. Are we more happy with it than we were? Do we have a risk appetite statement specific for housing? Because obviously the HRA is ring-fenced and is a separate pot of money. So are we, because I know that the regulator of social housing regulated Cheltenham Borough Homes on viability and governance. It doesn't regulate you now, but do we as a committee, with this coming to us, are we looking at the viability of the HRA? Is that part of our remit? And just in terms of what I've read from the sector risk profile, the balance of investing in existing properties to get them up to the required standard now versus the importance of delivering new supply. The sector risk profile was saying that it estimates 43% of the turnover of social housing providers will be used in investing in existing stock. So how is that affecting our ability to deliver much needed new homes? Because obviously we have a waiting list and a bit of a crisis of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I think, Gareth, you can answer some of those.
So I'll preface this by saying that I don't have my Director of Finance or Finance team here, but what I can answer is I think you are right that some of those sorts of pressures in the HRA, like the General Fund, are going in the right direction in terms of interest rates and all those sorts of things. And inflation has come down, so that inevitably will have a positive impact. But I think more than that, we are making efficiencies in terms of becoming one organisation. And so that has both a benefit to the General Fund and the HRA. And that was part of one of the key reasons why the administration, amongst others, but there were sort of 3 or 4 key pillars as to why the administration took the decision to bring housing services under the direct control of the council, was to deliver efficiencies that in effect help to both protect customer-facing services in terms of the General Fund, but also the long-term viability of the HRA as well. And we are well on the way in terms of already harnessing some of those efficiencies. So I think that you can see that start to play out to the benefit of the HRA in the efficiencies that we are starting to make and will continue to make. Because I think that as we've worked together in partnership, what I'm encouraged by is 2 things. One, I think that we have confidence in our estimates in terms of what we are able to deliver in terms of the efficiencies that we've already set out. But secondly, what I think is really encouraging is listening to colleagues themselves across housing and other departments of the council coming forward with opportunities themselves and identifying areas team by team, service by service, that we can also harness. So I think you can see that kind of coming through and reflected in that risk assessment. In terms of the council and the housing committee, I don't want to sort of disappoint you in terms of the decision-making oversight of this committee over the sort of budget, but it remains the council's responsibility to set the budget and to look at the oversight of that, of the overall council and HRA budget. So they still have the decision-making over setting that budget. Having said that, clearly as a housing committee, you have an interest in monitoring that budget, which is why it's only right that we provide information in that regard. But it is still reserved for council the decision making on setting that budget.
And the risk appetite.
Can you just repeat? So risk appetite in terms of the HRA, in terms of.
Yeah, we used to always have a risk appetite statement as to where our appetite for risk sat. And models would be done, and we'd probably need to talk to Stafford and others about this, about how they would model different scenarios depending on the prevailing conditions, whether interest rates would go up or go down, etc. And our appetite for risk was determined by those and other factors. So you effectively didn't want to take dangerous risks, but you didn't want to miss opportunities. So I just don't know, because obviously this is all new, where that risk appetite sits.
So firstly, the leader often, I think will be in the minutes of many council meetings, saying that her approach is always to be risk aware rather than risk averse. So I think that sets the standard that the administration works by. So I suppose in terms of risk appetite corporately, I think that's where it would sit. In terms of the risk appetite and looking at those scenarios, I will double check with finance colleagues outside of this meeting, but in terms of the medium term financial planning and the looking at the scenarios, they will be looking at general fund and HRA scenarios. So I would expect the same things to be happening. It might be presented slightly differently in the new world of us being one organisation, but yes, I'll take that away, but I would expect the same sorts of assessments and scenarios are looked at.
Thank you. Is that okay for you? Yeah. I do have one comment on the report. It's just a simple one. The description for tenant satisfaction says customer satisfaction. So it's not really an explanation. I had something in mind that might say something like life chances, quality of life experienced by residents, which is approximately 15,000 people, I would guess, with the consequent effects for all residents of Cheltenham, referral to the Ombudsman and regulator, and potentially a change of leadership if we fail on that tenant satisfaction measure. So I thought maybe the words could be strengthened. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so...
Lucas has got a hand up.
Oh. Sorry, Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Richard. Just a quickie, really. If you look at item 2, it's page 123, 2.6. There's a copy of the risk register attached, and then this is a brief note as to what that risk register entails. And underneath it, as you said earlier, Richard, there's tenant satisfaction. That means that we will go and ask the tenants questions that we want them to answer that will look to us as good answers. What there isn't here is the tenant's voice. So let me give you an example. We today, earlier, we've talked about every aspect of what the council does as a landlord and how important it is for the tenants to be absolutely engaged in that. If all you're doing is looking at tenant satisfaction, that engagement isn't taking place. So what I would like to suggest is that we include another piece in here which looks at tenant communication and tenant voice, so that we actually are enabling tenants to work with us, not simply to be asked, are you happy with this? I think there's a big difference between the two. And that's certainly something that I would like to see.
As part of the risk register.
Yes, because if we don't know what the tenants are thinking when, for example, we're looking at the safety of the building that they're in, or we don't know what the tenants are thinking in relation to antisocial behaviour nearby and the impact on them, then what we're not getting is the tenant's voice. And that is a risk in relation to how we manage our properties in a way that the regulator and we would wish to have them managed, and in a way that the tenants would wish to see them managed. And that's why I'm suggesting it.
Can I ask Gareth to comment on that?
Councillor Clucas, very happy to look at the wording of the existing risks to make sure that that emphasis is picked up. If it's not quite right, we can look at adding another risk to capture that. So I think we'll just take that away and look at the wording to make sure that it's right, and so that you get that strong emphasis.
Thank you, Gareth. Okay, 20 past 7. So we're on to item 11, but the last two items are not long ones. So updates from the tenant and leaseholder panels. Sorry, take your time. I'd like to invite Agnieszka Wisniewska, tenant representative, and Bożena Tarnawska, leaseholder representative, to provide feedback from the recent panel meetings.
We are midway through our last scrutiny, answering the question, how does the housing service demonstrate its learning from complaints? We had a fantastic presentation from complaints officer Natasha Dillon, and we are working with Ellen Policott to review data relating to complaints and learning. Review of the draft ASB policy. We have reviewed the draft policy and have offered feedback and asked for clarification on a couple of sections. Review of the customer's voice plan. We have supported Ellen Policott to review her new draft customer voice plan. The tenant panel welcomes the expansion of the customer voice offer. Training with Penningtons. The tenant panel will be receiving training on 13 December on property compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bożena?
So I'm not that well prepared. We had meeting and it was 12 participants. So we organized ourselves, and the panel, all the participants decided to be members of the panel, leaseholders panel. And our main concern on this meeting was communication between council and the leaseholders, because we feel like we are not informed or is not communicated to us all the investments and what is what repairs are planned, investments. So we would like to be more involved in this. That was the summary of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you both. Can I ask, are there any questions? I have one, actually. In terms of what I was talking about before, in terms of the hedging, fencing and boundary policy, I see that you also reviewed that in your tenant meeting, or leaseholder meeting. I want to know whether by my action of trying to introduce that for next year, I've steamrolled your group, and what you would like is something different. And I was going to suggest maybe, with Ian's suggestion, that the Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust could come and talk to you about hedging to help you understand it, and then maybe you could have a discussion before we just go ahead and change things without engaging, without having you engaged. So the question is, did I steamroller you?
No, I definitely agree with this.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so there are no other questions. No decision is required, but the committee can make recommendations if needed, including when they would like to invite further scrutiny from O&S or the Cabinet. So item 12, a review of the Housing Committee forward plan. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna, oh, you might have it.
The forward plan was circulated with the agenda and is taken as read. It is currently being reviewed due to the scheduling of additional meetings in February, March and April. An updated version will be provided at the January meeting. So with that in mind, are there any comments? Okay. I think I did have one. Yeah, so my comment was we've got dates for other events like budgets and things like that. Could they become put into this so we would see this is the budget setting, this is when we review the draft budget? It's all in there, it's fine, it's fine. No decision is required, but members may comment on the forward plan or suggest future items the committee could consider. Ian.
Yeah, I think last meeting, Richard, you talked about getting some information about new supply and new housing that is being built. I think you said, Gareth, that something could come. I just didn't notice it on the forward plan, that's all.
Can I answer that, Chair?
Claire.
Yeah, so new supply is tracked through a different mechanism, so it's done through the Housing Delivery Group, and what we've been in discussion with the chair about is obviously rather than it go into two different meetings, is providing information from the Housing Delivery meeting, sharing that with members of this committee. So it won't come forward as a specific committee item, but as we move forward, you will be cited on what's happening. Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Anybody else? Okay, so we're up to item 13. Items to be referred to Cabinet. The fencing, hedgerow and boundary policy has been recommended to the Cabinet. No other items are scheduled to be recommended to the Cabinet. Item 14, the briefing note, Housing Sector Insight, to provide the committee with an overview of recent developments in the housing sector and provide opportunities for horizon scanning. Does anybody have any comments or wish to discuss any items? Okay, the briefing note was circulated with the agenda and is taken as read.
I think Councillor Clucas might have wanted to come in now.
Oh, Councillor
Just
Clucas.
to say, Chair, I think this is a really useful and really good synopsis of what has been happening, and I think Claire ought to be thanked for that.
Thank you very much for those kind words. Although it is in my name, I take no credit for its creation at all. It is all down to Rian, who diligently goes and does all of the research and pulls it together. It just happens to have my name on it. So thank you very much for the kind words, but they are very much for Rian as opposed to me.
Okay, so I think we all agree we'll redirect that praise to Rian. Thank you. Date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 15th January at 6 p.m. I can confirm that the meeting is now closed.